In the search for answers to my period pain, I ended up turning to an unlikely place. Or maybe it's the most likely. It was TikTok. I thought TikTok might be a place that I could hear about other people's period pain. And maybe there'd even be doctors on there sharing some information I didn't have yet. I started specifically searching TikTok for cramp content. I found shockingly little, especially considering we now know dysmenorrhea affects up to 90% of menstruating people. It seems like every little weird facet of life is explored on TikTok except period cramps. I did find a few TikToks about that moment when you're having cramps and suddenly you get a sharp pain in your butthole.
What do you want from me? What do you want? Please!
I didn't really find much about the experience of having period cramps or what has helped people with their period cramps. But what I did find was an avalanche of TikToks about hormone balancing.
Here's 5 signs that you're running on stress hormones and high cortisol.
When and where you are breaking out can tell you exactly which hormones are causing this.
When we're in a state of insulin resistance, this tells our ovaries to make more testosterone. If your metabolic health sucks, your hormonal health is going to suck.
And once I started watching some of these, the almighty algorithm just served me more and more.
In the last 6 months,
you need to be on a cortisol protocol.
It was overwhelming trying to understand what these hormones did in the first place and what might be going wrong, and trying to match my symptoms up with this information while also trying to sort out the wellness grifters and the influencers from the actual experts. But I kept watching because, honestly, this was the closest I'd felt to getting useful information that might help me in a long time. I know we just talked last week about all the amazing research happening at the GYRL lab, but that's research that probably won't result in actual relief from my period pain for years. I'm looking for something to help me now. These women were talking about quality of life. They were talking about pain and discomfort and mood swings and bloating, things that most doctors just brush off. This whole time, has everything that's been plaguing me just been a hormone imbalance? Could a supplement from the TikTok shop fix me? Or is this just another weight loss scam dressed up like wellness? What does balancing your hormones even mean? And how can I do it?
What's happening to your body? We don't know because we've never really studied the female Say it's all in my head, but the research is quite spotty. No, we've never really studied the female body. I go to the doctor to get dismissed. Try losing weight, you're just anxious. That's fine, that's cool, I'm not pissed. Just wait 10 years for a diagnosis. Psychosomatic, you're so dramatic. Hysterical, emotional, hormonal, erratic. Heart disease, chronic fatigue, depression and anxiety. Do you have pain? No, you don't, because we've never really studied the female body.
Welcome back to CRAMPED, the podcast where I try to find answers to my severe period pain and then try to understand why answers have been so hard to find. And look, I'm not new to the internet. I know scammy wellness bullshit when I see it, but not all these people talking about cortisol were selling things. Some of these people seem to be legit medical practitioners, and some people were just talking about their own positive experiences. After 20 years of not getting help from doctors for my period pain, I'm getting desperate for some way to understand what's happening to me. I'm getting desperate for some hope that I'll ever get relief. This hormone balancing thing was starting to sound pretty good. And I'm not the only one that feels this way. I got in touch with one of my personal favorite podcast producers to talk about her experience getting sucked into TikTok wellness.
I'm Alex Sujong Laughlin. I am the supervising producer and co-owner of Defector Media, and I have experienced crippling menstrual pain for my entire adult life.
Welcome. You're in good company. What is the kind of pain that you experience?
It feels trite to even call what I experience pain. That feels like too small a word for the pain that I feel. In its most basic form, it is cramping in my uterus, but that extends across my whole back and up my shoulders and into my head and I have headaches and dizziness and nausea, and it's terrible. It's the worst kind of pain.
How long does it last usually?
It really comes and goes. I don't have a regular period anymore because I'm on birth control to manage the pain. So I am on a 90-day cycle, which means that in theory, it should only last for a week every 3 months. In practice, what that means is that I still get monthly menstrual pain. It's just not quite as intense.
I'm sorry that you experienced that. That's really hard.
It sucks.
Especially, I imagine if we're here and you're talking about being on a birth control now, you've tried a lot of different things.
It's frustrating because I've been to so many doctors and been like, hello, my period pain is destroying my life. It is making it so that I cannot do anything for 2 out of every 4 weeks. And most of my doctors have either prescribed antidepressants or just said, hey, did you know that you can take Tylenol and Motrin at the same time?
And then get stomach ulcers.
Yeah, so a lot of just over-the-counter painkillers and hot baths, heating pads, e-stim devices, every pain relief solution you can imagine.
Yeah, but nothing that really works.
Yeah.
You wrote something that I immediately devoured. It was an article about hormone balancing.
Yeah, I started writing this because I was noticing that on TikTok and on YouTube and Instagram, a lot of the women that I followed who are not generally health and wellness or fitness content creators, they're just lifestyle creators. This rhetoric about balancing your hormones was starting to creep in to a lot of their content. And so I would be watching a girl who I love her content for her fashion stuff, her lifestyle stuff. She has a cool life in New York. And then she drops a whole video that's about how she balanced her hormones and finally got things in check. And yes, she did lose 15 pounds. That was part of it. But also, she's happier than ever. She feels better in her body, all of this stuff. I just started to notice that I was getting a lot of targeted content about hormones. It seemed like it was the explanation for any possible physical ailment that you could have. It's, oh, you're struggling to lose weight. Oh, you're irritable. You're having a hard time sleeping. You have bad digestion. Anything that could be wrong with your body, including really bad menstrual pain, could be magically explained by hormones. This just general magical thing. So I looked into that because I could feel myself getting swept away by that rhetoric too.
Yeah, it's really nice, especially after going to doctors for years and years and have them be like, dunno, to have somebody be like, hey, do you have this list of symptoms, including horrible menstrual cramps or really bad PMS? This might help. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah, and it's really validating to have women, young women on social media being like, hey, I went through the same experience you did.
Yes.
All of these doctors said that there was nothing to be done, but I tried this thing and I feel better.
Yeah, it's that magic combination of I see you, you're not alone, and there's a solution that I can give you or sell you.
Yeah, that's what makes misinformation of all kinds so potent and spreadable, because it speaks to that vulnerability that we have.
If this could be the explanation, sure, I'll try it out. Why not?
Totally, yeah. And it felt like I was hitting a crescendo in terms of how bad things could be. I felt really bad. I was really depressed. I needed to make changes. And I was in a place of real desperation. And so I was like, you know what? I'll order this supplement. And I ordered some supplement off of TikTok Shop. And it's the first time I've ever purchased anything from TikTok Shop. I remember when it came in the mail, I felt so ashamed. Because I was like, I cannot believe I fell for this. Oh my gosh, I hate myself.
Did you see any difference, or is it just may as well?
It was definitely a might as well thing. But I will say, I started that at the same time that I started a handful of other supplements that I started on with a healthcare provider. And I feel so much better in so many ways. All these months later, it's definitely a weird thing where I'm like, yeah, this science is fake. And also, I'm taking this supplement every day.
Do you have any questions that you would ask to someone who actually knows about hormones and balancing?
What is a hormone? And how are they so powerful? Why are they so powerful? Are they? so powerful. And yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if my gut feelings about things being off vaguely have any sort of truth in them or any possibility of truth in them.
I had similar questions, so I found a hormone expert to talk to. Before we even get to the expert, a hormone is a chemical in your body that coordinates different functions. Basically, hormones act like messengers or signalers. They tell your body what to do and when to do it. So far, scientists have identified over 50 hormones. Some control metabolism, some control sleep and waking up, some handle temperature, blood pressure, fluid and electrolyte balance, some are in charge of your mood, and of course, some, like the ones we're going to talk most about today, are calling the shots when it comes to your sexual and reproductive functioning. The endocrine system is the term that's used for all the hormones in your body and what they do. Hormones get complicated, so I am so glad we have someone who can make it make sense.
My name is Dr. Thara Bayali. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm the co-founder and chief medical officer of a women's wellness company focused on women that are what I call the forgotten demographic. It's like you're not pregnant and you're not menopausal. Nobody is thinking about you.
Can you give me just like a real 101 on hormone balance?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, there's no such thing as balanced hormones. When people say, I have to balance my hormones or you need to balance your hormones, it really just means something's not working for you. And it seems like it has to do with periods and hormones. Everyone's so different. There's a huge study that was done starting in 1996, still going on women across the nation called SWAN. It's incredibly valuable data. Over and over again, the variability in women's hormones through cycling women is so huge. There's no way for us to just be like, this is the right level of everything. There is, of course, what we expect during a cycle, but there is no way to just be like, your hormones are balanced or not. This is a classic. I tested everything that's normal. Everything came back in the normal ranges. So my hormones are balanced, but that's not what I was actually saying when I said my hormones were out of balance. What I was trying to say is I'm suffering.
So when people are saying my hormones are out of balance, it's a way that they're saying something is wrong, but it's not something diagnosable, but I'm suffering.
Yes.
And something needs to change, and I need a way to change what's happening to me.
Yes. The other part of this is that we have two specialties. One is endocrinology is like above the belt. It's like all the hormones that come from the brain, the two glands in the brain, and then travels down. And then as soon as it enters ovarian function, it generally gets split into OB/GYN. In general, the split is at the belt. So the OB treats everything below the belt and the endocrinologist treats everything above the belt.
Which just seems like such a great way to treat a human body. This above-the-belt, below-the-belt divide is also known as the HPA axis and the HPO axis. The H and P stand for hypothalamus and pituitary, two glands in our brains that tell the hormones what to do and make some hormones. In HPA, the A is for adrenals, which are little glands that sit above our kidneys. In the HPO axis, the O is for ovaries. Somehow, our medical system doesn't think that these should be the same specialty. So when something is out of whack with our hormones, it can be really hard to figure out where exactly it's going wrong, partly because different doctors are in charge of different parts of a hormonal system that works as a whole. And what does this have to do with TikTok?
The adrenals do make one hormone that no other organ makes, which is cortisol, which is all the rage right now.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about cortisol. And so cortisol is a hormone that some people relate to stress, but it's actually an anti-inflammatory. If you ever think about having like eczema or some conditions where you have rashes, you put hydrocortisone on it because it's anti-inflammatory. And that's actually its role, even in period pain. We release cortisol to put out the fire.
Why is it talked about as, oh, it's causing all of these symptoms in you?
This is where I think misinformation is rampant. So cortisol is needed for inflammation. It's needed for your immune system. It's needed for your blood pressure. It's needed for your ability to feed yourself properly.
It also helps you wake up in the morning, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. It is part of your circadian rhythm. So it helps you wake up. If it's not high in the morning, it's actually a big problem because it's hard to drag yourself out of bed. It's what keeps you going, and it should go down by the end of the day and help you sleep. And so when we look at stress in our lives, there are these few different phases that cortisol can go through. So cortisol's role, it's coming from your adrenal glands. The other two hormones that come from your adrenal glands and only from your adrenal glands is adrenaline, coming from the adrenals, and noradrenaline. So when you are in a situation where there's a real emergency, adrenaline is what's going to get you through that. So you have to lift the car off of the baby. You will do something that seems superhuman because adrenaline is letting you do that. But adrenaline only lasts for 20 minutes in the body.
Okay.
That's why if you ever have an EpiPen, you have to re-push after 20 minutes because it's good. It's important. It needs to move out. Ideally, somebody comes within 20 minutes. But if it doesn't, and you still have to hold that car up, another hormone needs to come in. And cortisol is the hormone that comes in. So cortisol is a fire hose. It comes in. It's supposed to be big and loud and fast. It should go super high and allow you to hold that car up. And it can last for a long time in our body because we regularly circulate it.
Dr. Thera explained that one of the tricky ways cortisol acts on our bodies is by suppressing the immune system. Our immune systems generally only do their jobs when we're safe, when we're not in the middle of an emergency. When our immune systems attack viruses or bacteria, that's what gives us a runny nose or a cough or a fever. I always forget that those symptoms aren't caused by the actual bacteria or the viruses. It's usually our own immune system putting up a fight that makes us feel sick. So when my body is busy responding to an emergency and it's pumping cortisol to help me survive, it's not going to also fight some invading bacteria in a way that might give me a fever, that would maybe make it harder for me to run or climb or lift a car. My body's going to prioritize getting me out of the immediate danger before dealing with more routine immune system business. And you have probably experienced this. Think about going home for winter break your first few years of college, or finishing a huge project or an event at work. I always immediately get sick. It turns out that is because my body was pumping cortisol, trying to get me through that big, stressful thing, until I got a break, or until I went to a place that felt safe, where my cortisol levels went down, my body came out of emergency mode, and my immune system finally got a chance to do some cleanup.
Cortisol is good and bad, and it has so many layers to what it's doing. So then you have phase one where the fire hose is on so that you can manage the situation at hand. Evolutionarily, we are supposed to manage that situation, get out of it. You should not be holding that car for a long time, right?
Right, for 6 months, yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens in our society now is that what we end up having is you have to hold that car for a lot longer than expected. And your cortisol, your body evolutionarily is not ready for that and can't and should not be ready for that.
Because the car is Slacks and emails instead of a car. And they never stop.
Yeah, it's incessant. And so what will happen is what we call phase two stress, which is you start to be able to surge the cortisol, but it drops pretty quickly. And then you surge it again, and then it drops really. Or we use stimulants to surge that cortisol to get us through it.
Like coffee, like caffeine?
Yes, caffeine is one of those stimulants. It's a herbal medicine, essentially, and it's great. It can increase cortisol and energy. If you're using it to give you a perk you up in the morning, that's different than if you're like, okay, 6 o'clock. 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 4 p.m., just because I can't get through the day. That's a signal. Cortisol starting to oscillate. Your body is trying to help you hold that car up, but it is just not physically possible to output this much cortisol.
Is that sort of like burnout or?
No. So this is the thing that's happening. So like people are saying burnout when they're up here, up high.
Oh.
When you're working with burnout, there's the other phase. And these are the people who very rarely get to speak because they're not on social media because they're exhausted.
Yeah.
What has happened is the car drops, the person drops. The cortisol just cannot do this anymore. And so you end up with people with quite low cortisol, and that's phase three, and that is burnout. They don't need to lower their cortisol. What they need is to heal and rest and be able to have their adrenals trust them that they are safe again. What we see a lot in the my cortisol's too high world is generally going to be in groups of people who this is their first time at the rodeo of the difficult times. So their cortisol is going through the roof, and they may honestly need to lower their cortisol. So it might work for them. However, there are people who have come from long histories of racialized trauma, gender trauma, that this lower cortisol train is not accurate for what they're going through.
Wow. So it's not as simple as cortisol bad, must lower. Learning all the ways we actually need cortisol, but also how easy it is in the world we live in to exist in a constant state of low-level emergency, it's kind of blown my mind. It's not surprising that the way hormones work together and ebb and flow is more complicated and nuanced than a TikTok can fully explain. We're going to take a quick ad break and be right back.
'Cause we never really started the female body.
Welcome back to Cramped. We just had Dr. Thera Viali walk us through a 101 on hormones. Let's see if we answered Alex's questions.
What she said about there's not really a such thing as being in balance was really interesting to me. As I've navigated a lot of my health stuff this year, I have struggled with the idea that there's a normal that I should be striving for, because in medical messaging, there is this sense of this is the normal range, but it's only ever a range, and you can't impose these like really strict numbers and categories of this is good, this is a right amount of whatever cortisol, chemicals, hormones that you should have. It's all like this imperfect balance that happens.
When she said that people's levels come back normal all the time, but that doesn't mean that they're not suffering, that made so much sense to me of like, I don't have something diagnosable. I'm not sick in a way a doctor can give me medicine and fix, but something is not working right. This is the only language I have to say that.
Yeah, it makes you feel crazy. Last year, I went to the ER because I had pain so bad that I was crying. And like, for somebody who has had painful periods their entire life, to reach a point where you are crying from pain is like a really high bar. And I spent 7 hours in the ER and they did all these tests and it was horrible. And ultimately, they were like, nothing's wrong. It's just like such a helpless feeling to be like, I know that something isn't right, but I don't have any words to describe what it is.
And I can't get help for it. That's terrifying. For me, that was such a light bulb moment of when cortisol is high, it suppresses your immune system. So if you're like working on a project and you're stressed out all the time, and then once the project is over or you get a break, cortisol lowers and your immune system can respond to the stuff that's been there all the time and you get sick.
No, it totally makes sense. It's maddening because you getting sick or you sleeping for 3 days or whatever it is that your body does when your body knows it's safe is like indication that the way you're living your life in your general day-to-day is not providing you with that sense of safety.
One of the first times I remember hearing the word hormones is when I was prescribed birth control for my severe period pain at age 15. Looking back, it makes me feel kind of icky that the first time someone bothered to explain what hormones are and how they work in my body was in order to put me on a medicine that would control those hormones and change what they did. And we heard a few episodes ago from Dr. Tang how birth control can help cramps by making the lining of the uterus thinner so you have less clots or smaller clots and it doesn't hurt as much or cramp as much to push them out of your uterus. And that birth control can also be used to skip your period entirely. But since birth control is literally synthetic hormones, I wanted to hear a hormone-centered explanation. Can you walk me through why hormonal birth control tends to reduce period pain?
Oh, yes. I think that's pretty easy. So hormonal birth control, oral contraceptives, they stop ovulation, right? That's the goal. So if you stop ovulation, you no longer have oscillations at all in any of your hormones. You have flatlined estrogen, flatlined progesterone. When you're on oral birth control or oral contraceptives, your days when you don't take the pill are not a period. They're called withdrawal bleeds.
You're not bleeding for the same reasons that you do when you ovulate.
No, and there is no progesterone drop triggering it.
When you quote unquote get your period, when you are on a hormonal birth control, that is not the lining of your uterus that has built up shedding.
Correct.
Where is the blood coming from?
It's still from your uterus. It's your uterine lining, but it's not thickened through progesterone and estrogen buildup.
Wow. I was on hormonal birth control for, 8 years, and I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Thera has just blown my mind a second time. Look, does everybody else know this and I just missed it? Let's check with Alex.
That's wild.
You didn't know that either?
No, I didn't know that. I'm like questioning everything. Oh my gosh.
I do feel so galaxy brained about this.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. It's not technically your period.
Huh. Like I still bleed every month, even though I'm like technically on a 3-month birth control.
Wow.
I basically have what I imagine is like a less bad period experience. Like maybe the period experience of somebody whose uterus is cooperating on hormonal birth control.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
And yet what was sold to you was no periods for 3 months.
Yes. I mean, I feel like among my friends who are cis women, we talk about being on birth control kind of like we're rolling the dice because like none of us really knows how this is going to affect us in the future reproductively, but like also just in general, like our general health. And a lot of us are reaching a point where we're like thinking about having children in the next few years, and the whole like coming off of birth control and seeing what havoc has been wrought over the last decade is like a not insignificant part of that process that we're all processing together.
This is a question I've had too. We're told that birth control is totally safe and it's one of the most used medications among women. But based on all of my other discoveries of how little we know about women's bodies, I don't totally trust that. So I asked Dr. Thera about how flatlining our hormones using birth control might affect us long term.
We have an above the belt, below the belt issue here.
Right.
Which is, it is totally fine from a fertility standpoint, from a uterine standpoint. People who work above the belt, they see a lot of value to those hormones in your body. From an endocrinologist point of view, estrogen is protective. You're hearing all about it with menopause. It's important for your bones. It's important for your cardiovascular disease risk. It's important for your mental health and cognition. Like there's all these reasons that both estrogen and progesterone are important for us, but they are not relevant to whether you're getting pregnant or not.
Okay.
So above the belt, ovulation is very important. Below the belt, ovulation is not important.
Unless you're trying to conceive. Yeah.
Yes. And so from a risk, should you take it, should you not? Nobody is doing necessarily assessments on the long-term risk. There's no major push to find out, like, is this affecting women in the long term this way? And these hormones affect us in other ways. And we should be careful and cautious before we just say, come off of them all the time.
By now, I shouldn't be surprised to hear that the answer isn't simple and the studies haven't really been done. And look, by no means am I against birth control or saying don't take it. It's an incredible medication. It can solve so many problems and give women so much more bodily autonomy. I'm just also saying we aren't given all the information about how it affects us. And that's partly because medical science seems pretty incurious about how manipulating our hormones in this way might affect our quality of life or our health outside of reproduction. And so we're left to figure it out ourselves and to experiment on ourselves. Alex knows this feeling.
When I think about like the amount of time I've lost and the amount of money I've spent managing this pain over the course of my lifetime, it's really depressing. And I'm also like, wow, I've still done all of this stuff with my life. Like, wow, I would have been unstoppable if I didn't have this.
Can you imagine? I asked Dr. Thera, if we can tell that something is off, we're suffering, and our tests come back normal, what can we do to figure out what's out of balance?
I think the biggest part is what I would call body literacy. You have to know what's going on in your body. This is like a trial and error with yourself. Am I bleeding heavily? Am I not bleeding a lot? Can I feel my ovulation? Do I even know my cycle? Just to understand, it's not just, do I start on day one? Do I end on day blank? It's, can you feel your cervical mucus changes? Like, you don't have to be interested in fertility to know when you're ovulating. Mm-hmm. And your ovulation will tell you a lot about the length of time between ovulation and bleed, will tell you how much progesterone you have.
Ooh, say more about that. What does that mean?
So the length of the time between your ovulation and the day you bleed is on average 14 days. For some people, it's a little longer. Some people, it's a little shorter, but generally it's around there. And so most things are mapped to tracking the fact that your menstrual fluid comes out means you must have ovulated 14 days before.
Right.
It's the way even fertility world works. It tracks backwards, but that's not always true. And so sometimes for some people, they might ovulate and then 10 days later they bleed. So in the time between ovulation and bleeding, the length of time is usually determined by how much progesterone you have. progesterone is the mama hormone. It makes all the other hormones that are called sex steroid hormones. So it makes estrogen and testosterone. It makes cortisol. The dance between all those is that if cortisol is in high demand or has been absolutely drained, usually that means that progesterone has been drained. So cortisol, it's the one that gets the most attention. So if it's in need, again, evolutionarily makes a lot of sense. It needs to go to cortisol. And so it reduces its output towards testosterone and estrogen.
So if you have more, what is the correlation?
The more progesterone, the higher that progesterone can get, the longer the luteal phase will be.
Personally, I'm finding that learning about hormones is the same kind of confusing as that statistics course I took in college. Like, I'm with you for the first 3 steps. It all makes sense, no problem. And then at step 4 or 5 or 10, I get totally lost. I have come back to listen to this audio so many times because I can't keep straight in my head exactly what more progesterone does to your cycle. So I'll say it here, so hopefully I remember. The higher your progesterone, the longer your luteal phase. So the more time between ovulation and getting your period. If your progesterone is lower, you'll have fewer days between ovulation and day 1 of your period. So say you figure out when you're ovulating, then what?
Then you can understand, is this an ovulation problem? Is this a thickened lining problem? Is this not enough progesterone problem? And then target those things, right? If I have a super thick lining, how much am I bleeding? If I'm bleeding more than 60 milliliters, you're bleeding a lot of menstrual fluid. And that is considered heavy menstrual bleeding, enough to lose enough iron that you can't replace it every month. It's enough to affect your thyroid function. It has so many next effects.
Right.
Sometimes addressing thyroid function will help bleeding and cycles. Sometimes addressing iron will affect all of this. So if you can get a picture of what is actually going on rather than, I have regular cycles, which is what we say to our practitioners. Sometimes you see that somebody's under chronic stress. You find that the luteal phase is shortened because there's just not enough progesterone to go around.
But it's not just periods that are affected when different hormone levels are higher.
The way we engage is different when we're in different states with different hormones. So estrogen is highly verbal.
What does that mean?
It means that people with a lot of estrogen use words more.
Uh-oh, says the podcast host.
Like evolutionarily, it's a lot more social. It's a lot more outward. And progesterone is a lot more inward in here. This is the nesting phase. It's the time when you're supposed to protect the egg. And so things that you can do that can trigger those feelings inside of you because your hormones react to that are ways that you can shift it. It's, again, not a disease that you're going to go and measure your level to be like, was I 10 milligrams higher now? The way we behave will influence our hormones, not just the hormones influence the way we behave.
That's crazy. It makes sense, but it's crazy. I think we're all used to the idea that different levels of hormones affect the way we feel and the way we behave. That idea is presented to us every time someone says a woman is acting hormonal or PMSing. We're told very clearly that this is ridiculous behavior. It's a joke. It's a weakness that women have. We're at the mercy of our hormones that make us act crazy and emotional and want to just lie on a couch and watch romance movies and eat ice cream. But for some reason, I never considered the idea that it goes both ways, that our feelings and our behaviors affect our hormone levels. Let's see how Alex is taking this information.
Wow. I thought she was joking about the estrogen being verbal.
Apparently not.
That's wild. It also, makes me a little uncomfortable because it's like, women be yapping. Like,
right,
I'm like,
right.
Oh God, it feels a little, I don't know, gender essentialist. But I feel like my whole process of learning my body more and like coming to a peaceful truce with it has been partially being like, okay, what if I open my mind to things that make me uncomfortable? And those things maybe are pointing in a direction that like don't agree with my politics all the time. It's very humbling because I think I went into this being like, I know everything. I know what's right. I know what's not right. I know what's science and what's not science. And like the more time I spend learning about it, the more I'm like, I don't know anything. And also most people don't know anything.
Yeah, I feel like I enter medical situations like my body's doing something I don't like. I'm going to outsmart it, and maybe the doctor will outsmart my body for me. But anything that has worked for me, it's learning from my body. It's not trying to fight it or outsmart it. Maybe if something is off or out of balance with our hormones, it's not our hormones that need to change. It's our behaviors or our feelings. And since our behaviors and our feelings are often reasonable reactions to the situations we're in, maybe the only way to change those behaviors or those feelings is to change the situations we're in.
Checking in with yourself around what feels like it's creating the problem in your bigger life, right? Sometimes it's like you hate your job. And sometimes it's very tactical and simple. And then other times it's like, oh, this is really mired with my livelihood and my boss. And like, how do I handle that? But at least recognizing that these are the sources. And so really just using the resources that make sense, but then also to serve yourself is to become curious.
Getting curious about your own body. God, that sounds so nice. I really love the way that sounds and the idea of it. But what does that actually look like? What does it take to discover things about how your body works?
I spent so much money this year on health stuff.
Yeah, same.
Oh my gosh. And I don't feel proud of it. And I'm not like, do what I did.
Right.
But I do feel a lot better than I did 6 months ago.
It sucks, but it feels like shoveling money onto the problem of period pain. I guess you have to like shovel it in the right place, but it's the only thing that helps sometimes. And that's not available to everyone. That's not even available to most people.
No.
That's not an acceptable way to deal with this on a population level.
Totally. It's like if a childless woman in her 30s who is married, who has a great job, no parents to care for, and it is this hard for me to find relief, that's really, it's not right.
Yeah, I cannot fathom the people who are trying to deal with this with even like one less resource than me.
Yeah. I mean, I even think of my mom, like she is an immigrant from Korea. She also had absolutely horrible period pain for her whole life. And I remember she wouldn't be able to get out of bed. She would be throwing up. It was really terrible. And she never even questioned whether that was how it was supposed to be. She was just like, yeah, this is what life is like.
Right.
I think about her a lot because I'm like, I have so many more resources than she did when she was my age. And I'm like so much more privileged than she was. And yet I still barely have much more support on the pain front.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have a better understanding of what's going on with your own period cramps and your own hormones right now?
I do. I am freaking blown away by the fact that I'm not actually having periods. Oh my gosh. So like, I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while.
Yeah.
And I think having a lot of this information has been really helpful in just affirming the fact that even if something doesn't show up on like a ultrasound or something saying that something isn't right, that the pain I'm feeling is coming from something. And it's not just me being like, I want to feel pain today. You know?
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Pain.
Yeah. It feels so revolutionary to even acknowledge because so often the pain feels like I'm inventing it because I'm the only person who can say that I'm feeling it.
Yeah, and you're the only one that takes it seriously sometimes.
Yeah. Also, the thing about the actions that we can take in our day-to-day lives and the effects that they can have on our hormones and how that can directly affect the amount of pain we're feeling. That's something that I am going to keep thinking about for sure.
Do you feel like next time you go on TikTok and it shows you a hormone balancing girly, do you feel like you're going to have a different perspective or a different way of understanding it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I feel a lot less judgmental of them than I used to. I went into writing that article ready to burn it down and be like, look, sheeple, like you're being led astray. And I've also been led astray. And, you know, I think there's an element to that. But I also think that in the absence of deeper research and treatment options and greater institutional care toward the people who are feeling this kind of pain, I can't really blame people for looking for relief where they can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure some of those people are just trying to sell supplements and like make a buck.
Yes.
But I think probably the majority of the people sharing information who are not trying to sell something, they are doing something really kind, which is something helped me. Maybe it will help you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And ultimately, like, what else do we have?
Yeah, we're doing our best.
And that includes our endocrine systems and our bodies and our uteruses.
Yes, exactly.
Everybody's doing their best in non-ideal circumstances.
Yes.
After learning so much about how hormones work, I think I understand why things like hormone balancing TikToks are so enticing. We're all living lives that our hormones are not calibrated for. Most of us are in situations that our bodies interpret as dangerous the majority of the time. Our jobs, the responsibilities we have, the ways we're interacting with information and technology, they all put us on high alert, and our hormones are responding to that. We can tell that something is wrong. Even if it's not medically wrong, we're suffering. The real solution is usually going to be to just rest more, to be in less stressful situations, to spend more time in situations that our bodies feel safe. And on some level, I think we know that for a lot of us, that just isn't possible. That to be able to rest more and feel safe more of the time, we'd have to fundamentally change almost everything about our lives in a way that isn't realistic. And there's a lot about our situations that isn't within our control. Some things are just part of the systems that we live in, and without a huge social movement, we can't just change those things. This is especially true for people of color and queer folks. So maybe I need a way to feel okay, despite the fact that I can't change my situation. Maybe I need a Band-Aid, like a supplement or a routine that makes me feel like I can take care of myself, even in situations my body interprets as dangerous. These hormone balancing TikToks, whether they're selling supplements or giving advice, make us feel like maybe we can just start doing one or two things or stop doing one or two things, that we don't have to change everything about our lives to be okay. If you're worried about your hormone balance, if you're suffering and in pain, even though your tests are normal, I think it's important to recognize that it may not be that something is wrong with you or your hormones. Your body and your hormones might be reacting in a reasonable way to an unreasonable situation. I know that's not a fun conclusion to come to. It doesn't have a list of actionable steps that you can take right now to help balance your hormones and be in less pain or discomfort. I don't have a fix for you. For better or for worse, I am not on TikTok telling you how to balance your hormones. But hopefully, you now have more information about it. More information that will help you find the right ways to take care of yourself and the people around you. Information that will help you be curious about your body and what it's doing and what helps and what hurts. Information that will help you do your best in non-ideal circumstances. Next week, I find a specialist and, drumroll please, I get a diagnosis. Cramped is hosted and created by me, Kate Helen Downey. Kelsey DiLanzo is our editorial producer. Sound design and mixing is by Kelly Kramarik at Maven Post Media. Our associate producer is Caitlin Sabater. Cramped's incredible theme song is written and performed by Faraday. Our podcast art was created by Nicholas Scheppard. This podcast is supported by the Simons Foundation's Science, Society, and Culture Initiative. Fiscal sponsorship for Cramped is provided by the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative. If you'd like to hear more from Alex, check out the many episodes of the podcast Normal Gossip that she produced and some that she guested on. You can follow Alex on Instagram at AlexLaughs or read her writing on defector.com. You can find Dr. Thera at theraviali.ca. That's THARAVAYALI.ca. Special thanks to Mia Lobel, Yvette Modenow, and Matthew Starr. If you want to join a community of real people talking about their period pain and sharing information, email crampedpodcast@gmail.com to get a link to our Discord. And if you, like me, were intimidated by Discord, don't be. It's basically Slack. If this podcast has been useful or helpful to you, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. We are an independent podcast, and taking just a minute to rate and review, it genuinely helps other people find us who might need this information.
What's happening to your body? We don't know because we've never really studied the female body.